Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes this afternoon. I'm delighted to be joined by Colin Watt. The return of the Mac, it's Mr. Morrison, and also the return of Double Denim, looking a bit bronzed. I've heard it's a spray tan. Right, thanks, every single one of you. Let's get diving right into all things Celtic. We are running today why Celtic board's complacency isn't just towards their own fans. What do I mean by that? It's the comments. I'm going to come to Alan Morrison about this first. It's the comments we've been reading overnight or this morning in relation to the Jacob Braham deal, which obviously we dragged our heels on. That there was apparently 3 bids, and they have come out. The club has come out and basically spoken out against Celtic's dealings. They've even laughed. So yeah, we are now the laughing stock of trying to do our dealings, and it's quite embarrassing, Alan, when another football club comes out and calls you out on that, and especially when they say they should have taken a leaf out of Rangers' book.
I've not seen those, but I'm imagining what that might have looked like. Yeah, listen, I don't know. We don't know what's happened with these deals. There's all sorts of stories about that player. A number 10 by all accounts. Is that the sort of profile of player that we're really, really needing? But the more important point, I think, as you say, is I'm sure Go Ahead Eagles, no skin in the game, have got no reason to be calling out Celtic other than if they themselves honestly feel that is the behaviour that they've observed and it's worth commenting on. And that is newsworthy because, as I say, a small regional Dutch club has got no skin in the game at all in that regard. So that is public data of some relevance. If you'd read it as a spin in the record, we could all just discount it as the usual nonsense. But that's where we are. So listen, believe it because they've said it, and it's, as you say. I think your lead-in is really. I think where you're positioning this is it's just yet more evidence of sort of, I don't know what we'd call it, ennui, but certainly lack of performance as we would want to see it from Celtic as a football club. And I can't deny the evidence of the public data on that one. But always there's context and caveats, as I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah, the big thing is, Alan, some people don't want to hear negativity, which they see this as being this is merely a subject that we're discussing because it's happened. We're not being negative. Others don't want anybody to criticise football club, and particularly in public. And whilst I understand the sentiment of that, I think that the club are dragging their heels in many ways, more ways than one. So the comments made, Colin, I don't know if you read them this morning, the comments were made by Jan Willem van Dop, who is a Go Ahead Eagles director, and he said there was some interest from Celtic for Jacob Braham, but we felt the gap was too wide. Right, that's fair enough. We're talking price here. Celtic could have taken a leaf out of Rangers' book, and you just think, like Alan says, no skin in the game. You try and join the dots when it comes to Celtic and the transfer dealings, Colin, but they're just being called out by a club over in the Netherlands. What's your thoughts on it, Colin?
Finish that quote. How does that quote finish, Paul? So that's not how it finishes.
It finishes ha. Yeah.
Ha ha. He's literally sitting there taking a Michael. Completely, and this is pre-Watershed, so we kind of go too far into it. But that's literally the way they're looking at it. And it kind of sums up where we are right now and how probably the vast majority of fans look at it. That is a shambles of a summer window so far. Don't get me wrong, there's been some good signings in the fact of Benjamin Nygren and obviously Kieran Tierney. But the way that we have been portrayed in the media is shambolic because of the way that we've acted in the transfer window. And it gets to the stage now where you see someone getting linked, like Adam Obert at Cagliari, and they're saying, well, he's worth £6 million. And you just know Celtic's going in with £300 in a lighter. That's the way that we approach these transfer dealings. So
a Zippo. No, even a Zippo, a throwaway lighter.
Exactly. Ha is literally the way you can sum up this window and the way that we've acted. It's perfect. And it's just frustrating, and it angers me that that's the way it is. But the anger's sort of subsiding, Paul. It's almost a kind of case of, if you don't laugh, you'll cry at it. That's the way that we've been this window. It's difficult.
It is difficult, Colin. And again, we're not doing this for the sake of it. We're frustrated. We're frustrated, and I think Brendan Rodgers seems frustrated. He's come out. He's now at a point as well where he's sick of talking about recruitment and signing players. I'm pretty sure it's all happening in the background in terms of him battering his head against whatever the challenges are behind the scenes. But it's definitely not a good look, Chris. And when Colin talks there about the £6 million figure, there is a sense, there is a feeling that we're not going to open the floodgates, as it were, until we find out what happens in the Champions League. The club are being very, very conservative when it comes to the money we're going to spend. It's almost like we're going back to these parameters set by the Celtic board previously. We're not going to go over £5 million. There's an age profile, there's a wage structure. Listen, I understand how business works, but in terms of ambition, after last season, Chris, this is where the frustration comes in. You want the club to show a bit of ambition. It doesn't look as though we're doing that. By the way, Colin's right. We have signed players. We've signed 7 players, one on loan. But again, are they the type of quality that's going to be improving our chances of the Champions League? Chris, what do you make, first of all, of this near contempt, not just for the fans, but for other clubs when we're low-balling them like this?
Well, look, I mean, for one thing, I don't like the statement that's come out from the Go Ahead Eagles executive. For me, it's a bit unprofessional. And to be honest, that in defence of my club, not their business practice, but in defence of my club, as it were, I'd be quite inclined to tell Go Eagles, get stuffed, keep your player and we'll go elsewhere. But the problem is that this is a problem of our club's own making. Now, you mentioned business and run the business earlier. There's something in business called controlling communication, controlling your narrative, right? And the big problem with Celtic invite these negative narratives and this negative perception through an incredible lack of transparency. Yet what we do post about and what we do communicate out to the heavens is we've got 100+ million in the bank. We've got all this money. We're the most financially stable, and look at all how great this club is run financially, and we've got all this money in the rainy day fund and all this sort of stuff. Well, clubs are looking at that and saying, okay, you've got all that money. Well, put it where your mouth is. That's what we want for our players. So it's quite possible that we justifiably don't rate these certain players and these targets to the level that clubs are demanding. But clubs are entitled to do that because they know that we've got the resources to pay that fee. Now, I don't want our club to be blackmailed into signing a player that we need. But if we had a recruitment strategy that was effective and was demonstratively effective, we'd have multiple targets. We'd have first, second, third, fourth, fifth choice options, and we'd have a clear roadmap of how to procure those players, how much we're prepared to go, what position they're coming in to fill, what parameters of the manager's requirement they meet, etc. The problem is that Celtic don't tell you anything about the recruitment strategy. And all we have to base our assessment of Celtic's recruitment strategy is when a player eventually does come in the door, or if they don't in this case. And at the moment, we've got a Champions League qualifier coming up. We've already started the season, and we have less options on the wing than when we finished last year. In a season where we're looking to build on substantial European progress. It's a dreadful look. So, as much as I dislike the comments coming from the Go Ahead Eagles chair, this is a symptom of this very, very poor strategy that our club has. And they are not giving us anything that allows us to have a different perception of it. And that's the problem. They're not trying to influence a narrative. Now,
Colin wants to jump in with a point here.
Just jumping on for what
you can tell because he starts doing that with his chin. Very thoughtful.
Evil genius.
See, the strategy that we're sort of seeing here, Chris, is Celtic think a player is worth X. The other team thinks a player is worth Y.
Yeah.
Now, that works if there's no interest from other teams in the player. Absolutely. So if you think the player's worth £5 million and the other team thinks it's worth £7 million and there's the disparity and we go, no, we'll come back. We're not interested. It's like if you go abroad, if you go to just for example, you go to Turkey and you see something, you're going to pick it up, and you say, "What's the best price you can give me?" And they tell you it's 100 lira, and you go, "No, it's too expensive. I'll walk away." And if the club is wanting you to come and buy their player, they'll go to the table.
Yeah.
But at this point, the teams that we are approaching have interest from other teams in the player, and we saw that with was it Isaacson earlier in the window, where we put the bid in and we're saying, he's never worth £7 million. Well, no. And then 2 days later, he goes for £7 million. The clubs are well within their right to stand their ground, the same way that Celtic would stand their ground if they thought that the valuation for our own player didn't meet the bids that were coming in. Now, that's understandable and you can accept that. Where it gets to the stages where you can't negotiate, and we cannot negotiate right now.
We don't give ourselves a position or a platform to. Yeah,
exactly, especially when we are the only team that seems to be interested in certain types of players. Now, Balakishwa was supposed to be going to France. That's probably agent talk because we've heard nothing since. With Jacob Braham, Go Ahead Eagles are coming out saying we want this amount. They've sold Oliver Antman. They'll probably not need to sell someone else now.
Yeah.
So we're working ourselves into a corner because we think we're Glasgow Celtic. They'll bow down to us. They'll come back to the table, and it happened last year as well when we pushed the boat with Engels, we pushed the boat with Ida, and it got to the stages where we couldn't negotiate. So we said, "What do you want?" And we gave them what they wanted. Now, did we overpay for them? Quite likely, but if we could negotiate, we'd actually maybe get a deal to the value of the player of what they are.
You know, that word negotiate, that's huge. And you ask yourself, who's doing the negotiating? So we would assume, I think, that Michael Nicholson's that man that's doing the negotiating. He obviously goes to these deals with the finance expert, and they try and thrash out a deal, Chris Mackay. So they try and thrash out a deal in respect of their valuation versus our valuation. That's just normal in football terms. But my concern here is that Celtic will start getting a reputation. Because if you're talking in the press, Alan, you're talking behind the scenes, you're talking to other football teams, aren't you? And you're sharing your experiences with other football teams. And before you know it, Celtic's negotiator gets a reputation.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that occurs to me, and I'm just throwing this in, it's just a thought really, is, and with last season's, experience in mind in terms of, did Celtic overpay for especially Engels and Ida? I think it's clear that they did. One of the features of the data analytics platforms that the likes of Tony Bloom uses at Brighton and now at Hearts is that it kind of takes what is industry standard, your sort of stats bombs, your Optas, your Y-Scouts, your sort of event-driven performance data, and it adds a level of intelligence on top of it, which really allows you to profile more intelligently. And by profiling, I mean you're looking at players not just to say, oh, he had this XG or he got into the box this many times. It's modeling which is sophisticated enough to say, well, what was the style of play that team played? What were the attributes that player showed? And how does that fit to the way that we're going to use that player in this system? And that's essentially the secret sauce, I think, that the Jamestown Analytics piece gives you. It's that ability to intelligently profile a player's likely performance based on available data, even if you're going to use them in a slightly different way, and even if you're playing at a slightly different level. Now, the reason I'm saying all of that is because it might well be that Paul Tisdale, sorry, it's a long story. Paul Tisdale claims that he developed his own algorithm for player profiling, right? That's what he said in an interview. I believe him because he said it. I don't have any reason to disbelieve him. Celtic have got a short-term collective corporate bad memory of vastly overpaying for some players. It would not be within the bounds to think that perhaps Celtic are moving in a direction, given Tisdale's position in the company, of using a more I'll say sophisticated. I don't mean that to be a positive or a negative. I just mean it's maybe algorithms and analytics that has more functionality. I'm not saying it's better or worse. I'm just saying it's different, perhaps more, as I say, more complicated way of profiling players. Because actually, if you look at recruitment this window, there's a lot of merit in it. You know, to get Negrin, who's I think looks a very accomplished, technically proficient, physically proficient, international standard player for that price is remarkable. You know, I guess Tierney's probably a special case, but the two Japanese guys that Rodgers has gone out of his way to almost dismiss is, you know, Inamura has potentially some incredibly high upsides, but was playing in a terrible team with a terrible defense in a different position. But his kind of attributes and his special powers, if you like, do look coherent with the way that Celtic play. And similarly, Yamada is incredibly similar. If you look at Yamada's season where he played, where he was very successful personally, which was not this season, it's last season, and you look at how he was utilised, and you look at his profile, it's not that different. It's in the neighbourhood. It's in the neighbourhood of Kyogo's best season at Vissel Kobe and Maeda's best season at Yokohama F. Marinos. It's in the neighbourhood. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as them. I'm just saying there's a coherence to that signing that he profiles in a way that fit the way that Celtic play, whether Rodgers likes that or not, right? So there may well be some tensions going on in the club around this shift, and I'm not, but it also may be because the other thing that Tony Bloom, and certainly they do at Brighton, is they put a value against every single player. Every single player in that database has a sort of minimum, maximum value attached to them. And I can't remember where I was reading, but essentially we're all laughing at Manchester United at the value, the price that they were paying. That Brighton had these players valued at almost half. This is the price we're willing to go to. Manchester United are willing to go to double. That's stupidity. It's stupidity, and we all see the direction that Manchester United are going. So I'm just adding this into the mix because I'm not disagreeing with the sentiment behind what's being talked about here. I'm just saying that we're specifically anchoring it on recruitment because that's what we, the fans, probably care most about. I share the same concerns. I wouldn't anchor it on recruitment per se because I think recruitment is going through a change, let's call it, in terms of approach. And there might be some bumps, there will be some bumps on the road, and some of those might be manifesting itself in we're not paying that much for that player because based on our research and our very clever profiling algorithm, we don't think he's worth it. And I'm kind of okay with that as an approach. I'm not saying, if we're sat here at the end of the window, we haven't signed any wingers, I'm going to be as furious as anyone else. I'm just saying, as an approach, if that's the road we're going down, that's at least in line with the top end of the industry. And that, to me, might be an improvement. I'm caveating this and I'm wrapping it in cotton wool because I don't know for sure. I'm just putting it out there that might be a factor here. If we want to get back to the Celtic are a shambles, there's lots of fertile ground there. I'm just not sure recruitment is exactly for the same reasons the area that we focus on. If that makes sense.
Alan, on that though, just as a slight counterpoint, I don't disagree with any of that. But I think the issue is, that about Brighton, that could be the case at Hearts. Why would Celtic not come out and actually give us some indication that is the direction that the recruitment process is moving in? Why wait until we either get players in or not? They could control, to an extent, the narrative here, but they won't. And that's almost self-harming for me.
Yeah, I think there's two things that might be true at the same time. One is that Celtic, as I think has been said already, are dreadful when it comes to PR, when it comes to communications. They're awful. Most clubs probably are, but Celtic are particularly bad. It was interesting. I just caught a clip of, probably quite an old clip. I don't know how old it is. I can't remember. Virgil van Dijk talking to Gary Neville or somebody, saying that when he arrived at Celtic, he had no idea how huge this club was. It was actually a world-renowned club. He had no idea. Well, that's just a small insight into I don't think some of the people that work at Celtic realise how big Celtic are. I don't think they realise the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people like us that are obsessing and spending our time, talking and thinking and reading and researching and all that sort of thing about Celtic. I don't think they realise, how much of an impact it has on some people's lives. So I think that is true. But what is also true is I don't expect, the club to come out and tell me every burp and fart and bump about what they're doing on commercially sensitive deals. I really don't. We saw Tony Bloom last week. That was very interesting. He didn't actually say a lot. I mean, he dropped some really nice sound bites about ambition and long-term vision, which was great, and it played really well. And fair play to him for that. I don't. I predict you will not see Tony Bloom or hear from Tony Bloom again until they win something. Just as a bye-bye. I don't expect them to come out, and I do expect them to come out and to tell us about things like, why have we got 80 million in the bank and what's the vision for how the club grows. I do expect some feel for that, but I don't expect to be told, oh, this is how our algorithms work. These are the transfers that we're going for, etc., etc., etc. The manager's there to say what he's looking for. We all know what we need to be looking for.
In terms of the communication, where we are though is ground zero. We get nothing. It's beyond giving us too much information. They give us nothing. And I think that when you are a season ticket holder, a shareholder, a passive fan, this kind of thing in terms of the communication, in this day and age where there are so many platforms and avenues of communication, it's simply not good enough. I don't expect to get all the intricacies of a deal and what's happening in that respect. But I want to know, and if anybody knows in the comment section, let us know, what is Celtic's vision for the next 3 or 5 years? Because I don't know what it is. And I think that you then start looking at the one and only spokesperson we seem to have, which is Brendan Rodgers, and you look at every word he says, and you look at every nuance. And, he's talking about if the club is looking for a manager to maintain, I'm not that manager. I'm not the manager of your football club. So then you start thinking, well, why is he saying that? All right, he did have a meeting with Dermot Desmond the previous week or the previous month. Was this the discussion? All right, you know what? We're just going to put the brakes on this progression for a moment, and we're just going to maintain. And I think it's only right that fans start questioning that kind of thing, because that's the only information we've got to go on, and it's coming from Brendan Rodgers. We've got a CEO who's never addressed the fans other than in an AGM. On the one occasion that he spoke was when Brendan Rodgers was announced. Other than that, nothing. And again, I don't want a Friday night statement from the CEO, but I want something. Absolutely want something. I think the fans need to know, and this is something that's gathering a lot of traction, what is going on with the stadium? The stadium is in need of a lot of investment, and we're not hearing about it. And the thing with that is, every passing year where there's no investment, the stadium becomes a bigger issue. I started doing the Wander Round Paradise 2 years ago now. Incredible that. 2 years ago, I started doing a Wander Round Paradise. And that's where I really started talking about it on Acsom. Because when you're there on match day, unless it's something as obvious as a big banner being missing, you don't really notice it. The place is buzzing. There's 60,000 bodies. You don't really notice all the intricacies of rusty panels and breeze blocks and vandalism. And honestly, it's a concrete graveyard when you walk around it at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning. And that's where I started noticing it and started thinking, right. So we then start asking people who know about the development of Celtic Park in the early days, David Lowe, Tom Grant, and they all agree with you. And it's like, this is becoming something that we're just kicking further and further down the road. So in terms of a couple of things in terms of the data and recruitment, using data-driven recruitment techniques, Alan, which I'm intrigued by that. I'm intrigued going back 2 years when I had the opportunity to speak to Brendan Rodgers about it. And it didn't look as though we were that sophisticated when it came to it. Maybe that's changed with Tisdale coming in. I've got to say, though, a couple of things you said that jumped out. Secret sauce. I want to know more about that. And special powers. I love this. I love this terminology. Absolutely love it. My only concern there, and like you say, Alan, Paul Tisdale said it, and we've no reason to disbelieve him. I would just be surprised if the club was really that on it in terms of, to that level of sophistication. I would be. And I'm just throwing this out there, and I just want your opinion on this, Alan, right? If we were, and we had that gauge where it says, right, I would pay between 3 and 4.5 for this guy, or I would pay between 6 and 8. Where do you think that gauge was? Because these three guys are getting it in the neck at the moment. The three big signings from last season. Where do you think the gauge was for Trusty, Ida, and Engels? I mean, I don't think you've got access to that system you were referring to. Where do you think the gauge was? What would your opinion be on that, Alan? You've gone quiet. You've just gone quiet. You need your superpowers back, your special powers. There you go.
Keep coughing, so I put myself on mute. Yeah, listen, I'm going to get feet held to the fire if I invent numbers. I would just be inventing numbers for what those players. So I'm going to sidestep that one, Paul, if you don't mind. My concern, and it's an opinion, my concern is that I suspect Celtic have actually got pretty good. I think there was quite a significant revamp of the facilities. This was under Ange at Lennoxtown in terms of some of the physical kit they had in there, sort of ice bath technology and all this sort of stuff. I suspect it's probably very good. I suspect it's probably, whether it's state of the art or not, I don't know, but it's probably certainly up there. And I suspect they have got, data systems that they use and access to things like, StatsBomb and Y-Scout and all this sort of stuff. That's fine. There's not many clubs, even in the lower leagues, who haven't at least got a foothold in this game at that sort of level, or don't find some way to use university facilities or something, right? The absolute key with all of this is talent. It's all about talent. First of all, it's having people in leadership positions with the vision and understanding of the importance of these things to drive the strategy such that you are compelled to maximize the benefits you get out of it. And second of all, is then hiring people with the talent to make the best use. And the third thing is the investment, because it's not just a case about having some data systems and then throwing a few people in a room. You've got to integrate these things properly so that you can drive insight and value, and that's quite complicated and takes a bit of time. Takes a bit of time and effort and money. So it's the talent bit that I worry about. Are we? Because you should be investing, and it costs money to hire talented people. Not as much money as it does to hire footballers, but you can make very expensive mistakes buying expensive footballers if you don't do that. So to me, this is the fundamental infrastructure we're talking about here. But the talent to run it and the vision at the top to demand it and to measure yourself against your progress. That's the bit I worry about a lot.
Well, I don't mind throwing out a figure for the players, and I'm going to do it. Let us know in the comments section if you agree or disagree. I think if you're going for a player like Trusty, Sheffield United had played football in the Premier League. He's an American international. I reckon 6 million, £5 to £6 million would have been that figure. Adam Ida, I don't think 9.5, albeit we only paid 8.5. I say only, with £1 million on add-ons. I would say probably 6 million, £6.5 to £7 million for Ida. And with Engels, I would probably say 7 to 9 would have been a reasonable, but Celtic have overpaid a wee bit. Would you agree or disagree with that, Colin?
No, but there's so much that Alan's saying, which you can understand why a club would try and do this and try and be professional. But in the same aspect, we're sitting here where season ticket prices have gone up, jersey prices are going up, everything's going up, and the money in the bank just continues to grow and grow and grow
as well. Yeah,
and you can be a professional club and have this infrastructure behind the scenes that Alan's speaking about, but also be progressive on the park. And at the minute, we're not progressive on the park until we see progress from that team that finished the season last year. That's all we're going to get for the next 3 weeks or whatever's left of the transfer window. Is where are these signings and what are we doing?
Did anybody see Liam Scales' birthday message on the Celtic?
That was COVID era, wasn't it?
Did you see, honestly, if anybody thinks it's just about a few guys on Acsom moaning, have a look at the happy birthday message that Celtic sent out to Liam Scales. And by the way, happy birthday to Liam Scales, or Leo Scalacci as we like to call him. Man of the match at the weekend. Colin, I don't think you've seen that. I'll show you again. There you go. There's Leo.
He was never man of the match at the weekend, by the way. He was miles away from being man of the match at the weekend.
I don't know. I think Alistair Johnston would have been up there for me as well. I thought Johnston was excellent.
James Forrest was the best player on the park, and he only played half an hour.
He made a big impact. I think, again, I would need to ask Alan in terms of all the data stuff. For me, Scalesy seemed to win everything. Aerial duels, a lot of great use of the ball. But again, data sometimes surprises you when the eye test is challenged by data. Sometimes that surprises you.
See, in terms of a centre half, the centre half 101 defending. 101 is winning a ball in the air. The way that Celtic play football is with the ball at their feet, and Scales is not the centre half that you want to be carrying the ball forward. He's not somebody that can do it, which is part of the reason why you see we're still looking at a centre half position. It was also one of the reasons why Ange was going to get rid of him, because he couldn't play the ball forward. He was too slow. He kept passing it back. You've seen the clips of him saying that. Winning a ball in the air is all one thing, but the way that Celtic play football is with the ball on the deck. So it's great that he's commanding in the air, but you've got to have both of those facets to your game, and Liam Scales doesn't have it for me.
Do you want to wish him a happy birthday, though, Colin?
Yeah, happy birthday, Liam.
I'm delighted to say that Glenn Schroeder is going to be joining us to give us a wee bit of an insight on the summer dealings from Aberdeen's perspective. No booing at the back when he comes on. I'm pretty sure he really enjoyed the Scottish Cup win at the end of last season. So he'll be coming on for the last 15 or 20 minutes. But yeah, let us know in the comments section. I'm going to bring in the comments because my sausage fingers didn't allow me to do that yesterday. And I'm going to start off with Paul McLean. You're in on the YouTube, still waiting on the statement of intent. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a 10 or 11 million pound player, Paul. It's just that we know where we need to strengthen, and we're not really seeing it to the point where we're stalling on other deals. So we're stalling the Telio deal. That's another thing that I think isn't a good look for Celtic. Gordon Coney, you're in on the YouTube afternoon Acsom. My annoyance with the lack of transfer activity is slowly turning to acceptance. I think Roger spoke about that the other week. Until things in the boardroom change, we will never progress, as the board has no ambition. Even if they did, Gordon, we wouldn't know about it because they don't speak to us. Ian Corbett, big clubs who claim to be the best in class at all levels don't get mocked by go-ahead Eagles. Embarrassing for the club, those comments. I'll tell you one thing, if Celtic were still interested in the player, he shot himself in the foot, because it's not a good look to come out and criticise the guys that you're negotiating with. Now, Colin, you wear it well. You obviously wear the watch to match the top. Yesterday, we recorded This Is Acsom. It's going out tonight. It's a Celtic kit special. We're looking at all the kits from this season. And you even see me wearing one of them, which is a sight to behold. There you go. But this one here is obviously the away one being modelled by Colin Watt. And I'll tell you what, I've kind of grown to love it a wee bit more than I did previously. This is obviously a remodelling of that jersey that was worn during many victories, but also that night against Lyon when Henrik Larsson broke his leg, and it was just horrible. What I want you to do to be in with a chance of wearing this brand new Celtic away jersey, unsponsored as well. It is short-sleeved. I wanted long-sleeved, unsponsored, couldn't get it. Is subscribe to Acsom on YouTube, give us a thumbs up on this video, and comment on this video telling me the first player that you think of when you look at the kit that this was modelled on. I'm going to give you mine. Mine's is Vida Reseth. Guys, Chris, you're smiling. What player do you think of you think back to that jersey?
Other than the Henrik, which is blocked out of memory, I would say Stefan Mahe.
Stefan Mahe, yes. Travis Bickle himself. Colin?
This jersey, someone that's signed on this date, Reggie Blinker.
Oh, Reggie.
Reggie. I saw that on socials. I was on the socials today. Somebody posted.
Yeah, he did. It became Cockney rhyming slang for you've had a Reggie if you've had a stinker. Alan, and that was as a performance on the football park, by the way. Alan Morrison, who do you think of when you look at the original NTL kit from back in the 90s? What player springs to your mind, Alan? Is Alan frozen?
Not very original, but it is Henrik. I do have to say, I would not very original, but it has to be Henrik. I'm not a fan of these fluorescent colours. I have to say, it's not. I don't like in any kit. At least the black and the green does kind of go together quite nicely. Some of them, other clubs, they don't at all. But My gripe would be I don't like fluorescent. The floodlights are good enough now. You don't need fluorescent. They used to have tricks like this, and actually it was even in the 1950s. Like for example, Wolves when in the days when they used to wear big thick cotton football tops. When floodlit football started in the 50s, Wolves introduced a sort of shiny top, one of the first clubs to do it, because it could be seen easier under floodlights, and it shimmered under floodlights that just looked really great. I don't think we need, I think that's really cool, but these days, yeah, we don't need fluorescent. I'm sorry.
I know where you're coming from, but you're talking about a Henrik Larsson with the dreads as well. What a vision, what an iconic look. I'm going to ask you guys before we bring Glenn in to give us a wee update on the Dons. A few of the maybe the selection dilemmas, maybe they're not for somebody's game, and I'm going to come to Colin because he started it. That's all I'm saying. Scales versus Trusty. Colin, Scales versus. I thought Scales had a good game at the weekend against St Mirren. They can be a big physical side. I thought he equipped himself well. Does he start at the weekend against Aberdeen at Pittodrie, or do you bring? Or is there another option? Does JSP Simpson Pusey, does he make his debut? How do you play it, Colin?
I don't think he's coming in to be a backup, so I think he will start. For me, if it was between Trusty and Scales, it would be Trusty. I think Trusty's actually came on quite well during pre-season as well. I'd like to have seen him start last week. I think there's a greater upside from Trusty than Scales, but I think if you're looking ahead to this game, I just don't see how you're bringing this boy in and not playing him. I would be surprised if he's not starting, to be honest.
I was surprised that Trusty didn't start at the weekend, Colin. And when I predicted my team, he was in it. What about yourself, Alan? Any concerns about Scalesy starting? Do you, like Colin, reckon that our loanee from Man City will get in there? There's a slight delay with Alan. So hopefully that will resolve itself. In the meantime, we'll be bringing in Glenn. And Glenn's going to be talking to us about all things Aberdeen. But before I do that, Chris, who do you start at centre half?
I think it's much of muchness. I think Trusty had a very good pre-season after a little early wobble. First game, I think you can allow for that. But I think Scales, by many accounts, now I didn't see the game the weekend. I was away travelling at that point. So
it isn't a spray tan then?
It's not a spray tan. It's not, you can't get sunburnt from a spray tan, for goodness sakes. But it's... but
I wouldn't know.
But I think Scales has equipped himself well in several games. But I do see Colin's point. I mean, I think if you're winning one-on-one aerial duels as a Celtic defender, that's your bread and butter. That's the minimum I would expect. I think based on the way Celtic play, you do need defenders who can play the ball out well with their feet. I think that's one of the reasons why Pusey's been brought in. I think this is an attribute he has. But I would have no fears if played either Scales or Trusty, because I think ability-wise and what they've done in a Celtic shirt so far has been very much on an equal level. So don't really have a strong opinion either way.
There's far too much sitting on fences today. I asked for a figure from Alan. He says he's not give me one. You're no bothered either way. God almighty, gives an opinion. David Boyle, you're in. Go ahead, Eagles in the press, embarrassing Celtic again. Yeah, it's not a good look. Jungle Lion taking care of business or not. Not Elvis Day again, says Jungle Lion. And John Milan says, starting to tune out of Celtic content with all the justifiable negativity. Hopefully we can have a few positives on the chat today. Well, here's a positive. And as I say, he is joining us from an Aberdeen perspective. He's going to give us a wee update on where things are with Aberdeen. Please welcome to the show. It's Glenn Schroeder. Been a while. I know that Colin still jumps onto your show from time to time. Glenn, still smiling from the Scottish Cup final, I see.
Yeah, I know. You mentioned it. I was going to give myself a little bit of an introduction before jumping in. I think that was the last time I certainly spoke to you, Paul, was the Friday night before the game. But yeah, Colin did a terrific job over on our podcast previewing the game this weekend. And I think it's safe to say it's been a very welcomed reaction for just how objective Colin can be, so hopefully I can be the same from an Aberdeen perspective today.
Yeah, I'll send you that 20 quid, Glenn. Cheers. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was Colin that made me aware of your platform and introduced us, Glenn. But you're right, we did speak on the eve of the Scottish Cup final, and going into that, I think my view on it is that Celtic would win, but it wouldn't be a cakewalk and it would be very tight. obviously I didn't expect for us to lose, but we did. How has Aberdeen followed that up? Give us a wee breakdown on how things have been through the pre-season and how the squad is shaping up.
Well, from a fan's point of view, I think we've come from cloud 9 to about a cloud 7 currently. That week, Monday night's defeat to Hearts has certainly brought us back down to earth. In terms of the club over the summer, pre-season hasn't been convincing. One point that I think was an excellent point raised over social media this week is I wonder if us winning the Scottish Cup maybe took the club by surprise and has kind of thrown our pre-season plans out of kilter of what we maybe expected had we not won the Scottish Cup. We had a closed-door game over in Portugal in our pre-season training, a game against Fulham behind closed doors, lost both of those games. Played Cove Rangers, won 2-0, but looked less than convincing in the final third. And again against Ipswich, things didn't work in the final third, and Jimmy Talleen, in his determination to play out from the back, Ipswich exploited that very well, down both flanks. So a frustrating pre-season, and sometimes you look for confidence going into the league off the back of a pre-season, and I don't think many fans had that this pre-season.
Yeah, you mentioned Jimmy Talleen. There was a point last season where I even tipped Aberdeen to finish second in the league. Didn't get much traction on that from the usual sources. How's the fans thinking, about the manager overall? Obviously, he comes in his debut season and wins a trophy. But obviously, there was some concerns in the second half of last season as well, Glenn, wasn't there?
Yeah, I had huge concerns over his stubbornness to stick to plan A. And I think, anytime a foreign coach comes into Scottish football, there's always that extra scrutiny on, will they cope with the demands? Do they know how to conquer Scottish football? And Jimmy Talleen, I'm sure, will argue yes, given the fact he's walked away with silverware after year one. The biggest time he went away from plan A was, of course, the Scottish Cup final, worked to terrific effect. Can he show that consistently on a league basis is going to be the one this season. So we had an electric start to last season, dipped off beyond belief and dragged ourselves into European places, and then accelerated ourselves into the group stages off the back of that victory in May. So we want to see consistency across the league, and I'm sure Jimmy Talleen wants to see that as well.
See, when you look at that Scottish Cup performance, Chris, we weren't, enjoying the greatest of form at that point, but it still came as a surprise. It was so flat, Chris, wasn't it?
It was, and Aberdeen for the early part of the season, as we spoke about, they were absolutely flying, and even though you took a bit of a drop off, as Glenn has said, you still view Aberdeen as being one of your tougher games, certainly in recent seasons. And I think we did take a slump towards the end of the season as well. It was almost like we were struggling with fatigue at that time, and we started to really see evidence of the our poor quality and depth. We saw that from the final team that was on the park that ended that game. Listen, it's to take nothing away from Aberdeen. I think Aberdeen went in there with absolutely the right game plan. It was very disruptive, which is sometimes the best way to play against us with our system. If you can really hamper the space, if you can cut out the passing lanes, if you can stop our players from having the freedom of the pitch, then you can really hurt our ability to open teams up. And I thought Aberdeen did that to perfection. And the problem is that we didn't have the options on the bench to come in and really change the game. Which in previous seasons you could point to players coming off the bench to do just that. And that feeds into some of our concerns for this season. We're still looking at our bench and thinking, where's the creative spark? Where's the game changer that can come in? It was a tough watch. I think it should have been a catalyst for more proactive action from our team this season, because let's face it, and again, no disrespect to Glenn's team in any way, shape or form, but we have resources that Aberdeen at this point can only dream of, right? And that's, it's testament to how well Aberdeen done to win that match. But we should have taken that match as, in a reactive fashion and said, okay, there's work we need to do to ensure that going forward, if we're in a game like that against Aberdeen or another opposition that are really winning those physical battles and are taking away some of our plan A type offensive weapons, that we've got options to come in and change it. And at the moment, I mean, we're barely getting that from a first team perspective, never mind coming off the bench.
For anyone, Colin, who hasn't tuned into your show, or your appearance, on Glenn's show, Red Tinted Glasses, Colin, what was your kind of overview of your thoughts going into the game on Sunday?
So we recorded that on Tuesday, Paul, and both me and Glenn were saying, as it stood at that point, we knew where our weaknesses still were. And for both teams, Glenn, you'll agree, it's across the front line. That performance from Yengi on Monday night was one that will go down in folklore. And we said, well, let's see what happens between now and the weekend. We're now on Friday afternoon, and nothing's changed. We've not brought in the firepower up front, and neither have Aberdeen. I know Jimmy Tilleen was in the press the other day saying he's looking to bring in 4 signings, most of them across the forward line between now and the end of the window, which I guess, Glenn, from an Aberdeen perspective is quite refreshing to know what you're targeting and how many you're looking to bring in. But I still think it's still the same. And Glenn, I'm interested on your view on this. You said to me on Tuesday, it's a struggle to see where the goals are coming from for Aberdeen. But I think for Celtic, if we don't get an early goal, it could be a complete repeat of Sunday again, where it's a case of, right, let's see where the changes can go and hope for the best. It's a very difficult place to go, Spatoge. I know you'll argue otherwise with your record book, but for me, I still look at it as a very tough game.
I know, I like how you always say that to me. It's a tough place to go, and I can't remember the last time we actually beat you at Pataudry, but I think, it's interesting because I do think, hearing your concerns, and I've been listening to the show before jumping on, and there is a lot of frustration amongst the Celtic support. And again, hearing the comments about resources, you've got enough resource to build a stage before you win a treble that you don't go on to win. So maybe you could have spent your money elsewhere on that respect.
Come on, Glenn.
Is that a dig? Is that a dig?
Well, Paul, I know also your good friend Pape Gay is going to be missing from this weekend, and I know how much of a midfield enforcer he's been in terms of disrupting that Celtic team as well. But the big concern is our lack of firepower. Look, I know, Colin, we spoke about Nicholas Milanovic and Topi Keskin and the threats they can bring down the wing. I do think that Milanovic-Tierney battle really will be one to watch on Sunday. But if we can't get anybody to put in the ball in the back of the net, it's all well and good getting the ball into the box, but you need to be taking your chances. So I do think the longer we stay in the game suits Aberdeen, but the first goal is going to be absolutely massive.
It absolutely will be. Colin, in you come.
The thing that we were talking about is the way that Aberdeen have approached the games against Celtic is Tilleen seems to stand off Celtic. Let Celtic build up to a certain point and then come forward. I think if Aberdeen do that again on Sunday, that's where the trouble kind of comes in for them. We spoke about, obviously, that last game at Pataudry last season when the B team kind of ran over Aberdeen 5-1. But that was players that had a point to prove. Now those players are first-team players. So can they produce a similar performance like that? It's all ifs and buts at this stage of the season. And it's, for me, that's the concerning thing, is like, you're 2 games now into the season with this game on Sunday. We're still not seeing what the structure of our first 11 is. And you're going up to a tough place like Pataudry and you're going, if the first 11 can't get the job done, who's the one that's going to come off the bench and actually change the game?
Yeah. But I still wonder, I know, Colin, we spoke about it and you don't want to use the word revenge, but we'll say point to prove then. Do you think Celtic are coming here with a point to prove? Because Paul said I put in a dig, but there's going to be noisy neighbours, if you want to call it, from Aberdeen winding you up across the weekend. And Brendan Rodgers last time ahead of that League Cup semi-final didn't like the noise that Aberdeen were getting over his own team. So I wonder if there is that element of point proving off the back of what happened in May.
I think the 3 guys that I've pinpointed who will have a point to prove are Casper Schmeichel, Alistair Johnston and Kyle McGregor for obvious reasons. And I think all 3 of them...
You need to remind anyone of the obvious reasons.
No, I don't think so. Certainly not Casper Schmeichel. And I think individually, we've got enough of that mentality in our squad. So even though Brendan Rodgers, and I'm sure he hates getting beat, I think individually we've got that character in our team to go out there. And I do think that's the way it works. People who don't think that there's an element of revenge or getting your own back and all that, that's exactly what it is. You're a competitive athlete, and that's what you want to do. You want to get, advantage Celtic, if you like, going to Pittodrie. And quite frankly, it's at that stage as well where if we don't get a result, you imagine Monday afternoon on Acsom at 12:30 if we didn't. So absolutely, you'll be tuning in. I'll not be dialing you in though, Glenn. I'll not be dialing you in. We're going to get a few predictions then before we let you go. Colin, I'm going to start with you. You might have given this on the red tinted specs. What's your prediction?
I think, as we said on Tuesday, it'll be a close one. I think there'll be the odd goal in it. I'll go for a 2-1 Celtic victory.
Sorry, it's red tinted glasses, no specs. And I've just renamed it. There you go. There's your sister channel renamed. Chris McElwain, what is your prediction for the weekend?
I agree with Colin. To be fair, I think it'll be. I would hope for 2-0 because I think our defence at the moment is probably the most solid area of our team. So I'm hoping we can keep a clean sheet. But I think we really are struggling for creativity up front. So I think it will be quite a tight, hard-fought game. I think we might take an early lead, but it'll take us a while to build on that. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 with a late goal to finish it off.
Okay, and Glenn, do your worst. What's your prediction for the weekend?
I can't see us winning this game based off of what I saw on Monday night, but I'm not coming on here and predicting a defeat. I think it's going to be a hard-fought 1-1 draw. I think despite both of us, having concerns on the front line, I do see both teams finding a way through each other's defence. So, I'll sit on the fence and go 1-1.
1-1. I do think there'll be goals at each end. So 3-1 is my prediction for Celtic in Celtic's favour. And Glenn, you're always welcome back. Hopefully we'll see you again on a Celtic State of Mind. Thanks for joining us.
Lunchtime. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Take care, mate.
Always an absolute pleasure. We're going to get Alan back in because there was a few gremlins in the works there, unfortunately. But a wee reminder that the shirt being sported by Colin, which is behind me on the mannequin here, although mine's is sponsorless, this is yours if you want to enter into a competition. All you need to do, give us a thumbs up on this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know which player the original that this was modelled on jersey reminds you of, and you could win this. We have one jersey to give away, and we will also be moving on to the home jersey and the coleslaw jersey, as it was getting called yesterday, the third kit. I'm going to bring Alan back in. Alan, sorry we lost you, mate. Thanks for being so patient, and you're back in on the show. And I don't know, did I get an opportunity to ask you about Scales versus Trusty?
You didn't. I've written about extensively on this on huddlebreakdown.com. I've spoken about it multiple times, to be fair. It's a matter of it's a matter of what your poison is, right? If you want better ball progression, people passing the ball through the lines, then you'd go with Scales, and that's what Rodgers seems to prefer. If you want a better defender, so more aggressive defender, faster, quicker recovery, better in the air, you'd go with Trusty. I suspect, as I say, we'll go with Scales because for those reasons. Personally, I'm a bit old-fashioned, I guess. I think Trusty's one of those players that if he was playing in Italy in the early 2000s, he'd be seen as being like a really, really great player because he's got all the attributes that you'd want in the defender, kind of no frills, really. But he's also fast, good pace, aggression, all that sort of stuff. I think with Tierney coming in on the left-hand side, we've now got sufficient quality and ball progression on that side and defensive solidity that we can have one person whose job it is just to defend. And so that personally, I would go with Trusty, and it adds to the pace of the team as well. But it's going to be Scales on Sunday. Scales did very well at the weekend, had a good game. But the issue there wasn't with Scales. It was the fact that it made no sense to me, unless there was an injury we don't know about, to have not had Inamura on the bench. If you knew that you were going to take Tierney off after 60, 70 minutes, it made no sense not to have Inamura on the bench. That was the thing that kind of annoyed me. But yeah, so Trusty Scales, it's choose your poison. Do you want ball progression? Do you want defending? That's it.
I like the fact you've highlighted what Tierney brings to that side of the defence as well, which may obviously work into Brendan Rodgers' thinking. Cathal Quinn, in you come. We're keen to make up for not bringing any comments up yesterday. Please give a shout out to my daughter, Sosha, and myself only 22 kilometres outside Santiago de Compostela after a lot of walking on El Camino. Never done the El Camino trail, but I've heard lots of good things about it. So you've still got time to tune into Acsom, and by the way, we're blessed for that. So all the best. Well done to the pairies. And we've also got Hans1467. Morning all. Chairman of other clubs saying we should conduct our business more like Rangers is embarrassing. Yes, it is. Does anyone have a clue what is going on at our club? The custodians are vacant. I like the idea that Alan pitched us earlier on, that we're actually doing things really well in recruitment. We just don't know about it. Listen, if that was the case, fine. I can almost deal with, the non-communication. And I think
we may, Paul. We may.
But that also feeds into Brendan Rodgers' almost surprise at Inamura's ability to play. When he comes in and it's like club signing, and then you play him and you're surprised at just what he's bringing to the table. I said last week, you're a crackpot until you hit the jackpot. So Tisdale could be bringing in these phenomenally cheap acquisitions who really do make a difference. I think Nygren's, the sign's good with Nygren so far. And I'm going to go on to the midfield, Colin, and I think one of the questions would probably be around Nygren. Again, watched the game back, watched it live, watched it back. I thought Nygren had a decent game. I've seen a bit of criticism online about him. I thought he had a decent game, but McCowan comes into the fray and scores the winner. You've also got Engels in the sidelines. Bernardo seems to be at the bottom of the pack at the moment. Who starts in that spot? I'm guessing Hatate and McGregor. Who starts in the third spot for you, Colin?
Just before we go to that, Paul, just confirming the news that's just broke in the last couple of minutes that Celtic have announced a new contract extension for Johnny Kenny until 2029. Whether that shows Celtic believe he is an option for the club, or whether it's just part of him, part of this transfer dealing where we wouldn't let him go out on loan until he signed a new contract. But maybe we'll see some movement on that in the coming days. But on Johnny Kenny, I just want to touch on this before we go to midfield. Alan's talking about Inamura and bringing players like that in. For me, it was very telling that we brought on Johnny Kenny when we needed to score a goal on Sunday over Shin Yamada, who was on the bench. That, for me, was a surprising thing. It's like, we've brought this guy in, we know what he's got in Johnny Kenny. Then we've got this player that we've tracked down and we've signed for our largest transfer of the summer, and we didn't turn to him on Sunday. That one confused me. But going back to the midfield, for me, it would be Rio Hatate, Callum McGregor. And do you know what? I'm going to go with Arne Engels, but I'm not saying that Nygren's not playing. I want to see Nygren pushed a bit further forward this weekend. I thought that's where he was most creative on Sunday, was when he was sort of drifting out wide. I don't know if he's someone with a lot of pace. I've not seen a lot of him. But I think he could just be the one to sort of break down the defence and look at perhaps having a front three of Maeda, Nygren, and probably Adamida at this rate.
Interesting, very interesting. I actually, not that I don't believe you, Colin, but I had to verify what you just said there about Johnny Kenny, and you're absolutely spot on. Celtic have just announced it on their X page that Johnny Kenny has signed until at least 2029. What's your Kenny first impressions of that then, Alan? Because I was of the view that Kenny was more or less in the shop window. Bolton Wanderers were interested. They had bid 500 grand. We want £1 million. And we've just given him this new deal. What do you make of that, Alan?
I am struggling to understand it, if I'm honest. I've not seen anything. I've not seen anything really yet that would justify that. That's my honest opinion.
I think that's the problem. My question would be, Alan, based on what? I mean, what? No disrespect to the player, but what has he done to merit a contract extension?
Yeah, and you know what else, right? We've already spoken about the reaction to Liam Scales and us wishing him a happy birthday. I'm not even going to read the comments underneath the Johnny Kenny one because I don't think they would be very polite. When we move into the midfield, I think Colin makes a very interesting point because that probably pushes us on to the Yang question later on, Chris. Nygren, McCowan, Engels, who do you pick? Who starts for you?
It's an interesting one. You know, McCowan is probably through pre-season and in the first game is likely the one that's played himself into contention. However, I do think that McKeown sometimes has the most impact off the bench when he's coming in against tired defences or tired opposition, and he can have that impact as we saw. I kind of agree with Colin. Again, I think there's a potential if the manager decides it's the player's capable. I think Nygren could move out into the Yang position and play wide and give you that creativity on the wing that, from what I understand, we really lacked in the first match on that side. There seemed to be a lot of criticism towards Yang in terms of ability to beat a player or make something happen on that side. I think we've seen the capability of Engels at times last season. I know he's under a bit of scrutiny. I know he didn't have a great pre-season, but we know what he can do when he is on his game. So I think I would go with McGregor, Hatate and Engels, and if the option is there for the manager, I'd put Nygren out wide in place of Yang.
Either still up top, Chris? Or are you playing Johnny Kenny?
I was going to say, surely Johnny Kenny's in the frame now that he's obviously got the backing of the club. Do you know what? It's the hardest one to pick for me. From what I understand and what I've seen, Ida was on the end of a few chances but couldn't quite, he was getting into positions but just didn't have the luck of putting it into the net. He had the post for one. Ida, for me, has got a lot to prove. And I think he's got, for me, I think he's got a few games still to do it. But we don't know enough about Yamada, whether he's chapping on the door, but obviously the club has seen something in Johnny Kenny to invest in a new contract. So it could very well be that he is he's the main contender to Ida at this moment in time. So Ida would start for me. As to who comes on, no idea.
The one thing I will say, Paul, about Adam Ida is his best performances come away from Celtic Park. When you think back to some of his best games, away at Kilmarnock, away at Aston Villa, away at players like that, he does seem to be someone who, for some reason, just suits playing away from home. So this could be a game for him to come in and actually make a mark. A good striker at Celtic will get 15 to 20 goals a season, whether he's first choice or he's the option to come off the bench. And Ida did that last year. Now, whether it's struggling with the pressure of playing in front of 60,000, a couple of times he's stepped up to the mark and he's done it, but most of the times it's been coming off the bench. It's not really been leading the line. But away from home, he's definitely had better performances. So I think in that sense, you're almost trusting him to go into this game up at Pittodrie to give us a performance. But obviously, Johnny Kenny did okay last time up there as well. Yamada's the one for me. It's just we need to see some of him, whether we're holding off to the Falkirk game to throw him in. But we've spent that money. He's our biggest signing this summer, as I keep saying. We kind of need to see what we've got from him before the window closes to see whether it's going to be someone that's going to be in the squad or someone that's maybe going to go out for a development loan.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Alan, thanks for coming back in. We're looking at Nygren. It answers a few other questions if he doesn't start in that midfield position. Does McKeown get the nod? Engels, what's your thoughts, Alan?
Yeah, a bit perplexed by any negativity around his performance. He looked, firstly, forgetting about the data, just from a sort of look and feel, if you like, of the player. Balance, first touch, body shape, good physicality, speed across the ground, ball progression, ability to carry the ball is what I mean, control, all that looks really solid. No, he didn't have a spectacular game. It was a kind of fairly low-key debut, but the fundamentals to me all looked to be on point. In terms of actual performance, he was still up there in terms of goal contributions as far as creating chances. The two chances. I mean, the save that denied him a goal was just incredible, actually, from Yamal George at the end of the first half there. So I'm pretty encouraged with him. I think one of his special skills might be his ball progression, and that might sound kind of a bit mundane, but the ability to carry the ball at feet up the pitch is very useful in Europe. It just takes the pressure off the team. And he was the player, he was the midfielder that was crashing the box constantly. He was the one that was either alongside or just behind Ida. He rarely got the ball, unfortunately. some of the midfield, and obviously there was virtually no service from the wings. And Hatate had one of those days where every through ball was hitting the first defender. But I think we'll see him on the end of quite a few chances. So I thought he looked really promising. Having said all that, if we're still with the same squad, which we will be for Sunday, I would stick Nigren on the wing, probably left. I'd bring Forrest in on the right, and I'd play Maeda through the centre, and then you take your pick of Engels and McCowan on the to replace them in the middle. Probably Engels to start and McCowan to come on. That's what I would do for Sunday, but I don't think it'll happen.
No, I like the sound of that, Alan. I do like the sound of that because Maeda's the best striker for me. But obviously, there's a lot of plates being spun at the moment. I just didn't expect the Johnny Kenny plate to be spinning for another 4 years. Right, so that's an interesting one. Yeah, the comments have already started coming in underneath that announcement by the club. This is nothing personal towards Johnny Kenny. The timing probably couldn't be worse for the kid. Well done, Johnny, and hopefully you get on the score sheet at the weekend. Final reminder, if you want to enter the competition to win this beautiful Celtic away strip, brand new, we are going to be talking about this tonight at 6 o'clock on This Is Acsom. All you need to do, give us a thumbs up on the video, subscribe on YouTube, and let us know the player that the original version of that jersey reminds you of. I've said Reeseth. We've also had Blinker. We've had a couple of Larsons as well. Let us know in the comment section underneath the video. Thank you, every single one of you. 2,000 strong, 2,100 strong on the live chat. It's always an absolute pleasure. Join us half an hour before kickoff on Sunday for a Celtic State of Mind.